Welcome to the Solemn Vanguard channel. Today we're going over my current premium blasters deck. Now, one thing to be said here is there are so many options in premium and so many things to test and so many things that are changing in the metagame and so forth. So like right now, this build could definitely change in like a matter of days. That's why I also want to be giving you the options that occurred in my head and what I was thinking about, and pretty much what other card choices I had in mind and I'm testing and so forth, so you can make your own choices in the end and build your own premium blaster deck. With that being said, we start off with these 4 Alfred early. Now, I will say that's the only option right now. We don't have the new booster yet, so you can't run VR Alfred. And now one could say, you don't want to run VR Alfred for the reason that it's an act skill. So generally, if you stride over it, it's totally useless. Now, I get that. I kind of agree. I still think we would run Alfred early. But on the other hand, with the way premium is shaping up, generally ZTB and Dominate are still better than this deck. Definitely if you start considering Ichi, Tom and all that BS. So you will very often actually just ride grade 3 first, because this deck can rush, and so you can really ride grade 3 first, start pushing, and their first stride, unless they can G-guard, is generally not that strong. So there's many things to consider, but I wouldn't rule out VR Alfred just yet, especially when you then start considering that if you misride and you ride into this or something else we're gonna talk about, you are dead. You don't get your force marker, you don't get you don't want that to happen. So it's very possible that we eventually will go to 4 of this and maybe 3 of the new Alfred or something like that. We'll have to wait and see. But for now, we do run 4 of this for the simple fact that, well, either you get your blaster blade and you draw, or you just get your force marker and that's that. Apart from the name and that, the skill is less important if you miss it. For the grade 3s right now, I run 2 blaster blade exceeds and 2 Lu. Reason for that is I find there's value in running these blaster blade exceeds for the blaster blade name, because right now we only run 4 blaster blades, right? And since we no longer run exceed as the main ride, we don't always get that very easy blaster blade fetching. And so if you don't get that blaster blade fetching, a good player will start targeting your blaster blades, you'll lose them, and then your whole deck is vanilla, because you depend on that blaster blade. So therefore, having these 2 blaster blade exceeds helps you to still do that Alfred saver turn. And then on the flip side, I kind of also want to test Lu, because as I said, when your blaster blades run out, you're dead. So 2 Lus to get them back. I'm kind of testing both. I'm not sure what to think just yet. That's why I'm also saying maybe we'll just end up going with 7 or 8 Alfreds. I guess we'll have to wait and see. For now, this is the option, but you never ever want to ride these. Once you have to ride these, you're probably dead. Now for grade 2s, we run, of course, our 4 blaster blade. The new one has 10k body. The actual skill doesn't really matter at all. We run 4 Lu for the reason that, again, you need the blaster blades. And now that you no longer have exceed skill to fetch blaster blades, Lu became more important than ever. Apart from that, that early game, together with Blaster Friend Bargle and stuff, is still super good. So 4 Lus is absolutely a must in my opinion for now. Now here's where it actually gets really interesting, because there's so many options. Some people are running big amounts of Blaster Blade Spirits for the reason that some people still run Wingal Brave. Also, it's a Blaster Blade name, so that also helps. But there's also a certain combo that you probably know already, but I still want to go over it. And that's running these Taarnas. As you see, I got quite a few of them. So what Taarna basically allows you to do is, if you're on an Alfred, you play this on rear guard. And what happens is you are able to fetch an Alfred from your deck and ride it on top of the first Alfred. This basically makes it so you can have multiple force markers in a single turn. So you could be on Alfred, meaning you have your force marker here already or something like that. Play your Taarna right here. Get an Alfred on top of that force marker, put it here. I don't know, you probably prefer putting it here for your Blaster Blade stuff later, but whatever. Play another Taarna, fetch another Alfred, put another force wherever you want to put it, and just keep that going, that stupid little train right there. And that way you actually get multiple force markers in a turn. Now that sounds very good, right? That's really, really cool, because this deck wins by stacking force markers under Blaster Blade, making that Blaster Blade swing multiple times with Floral Paladin Flogel, finish your opponent off right there. Now, the issue with Taarna is that once you stride, he doesn't work anymore. So if you get the first stride, you have to choose, do I stride? Do I find more value in these Taarnas? Probably, but then you will dig through the deck slower, so the chance that you have a heal is lower. So there's a very big chance that you won't even be able to G-Guardian into an Alfred Saver turn, meaning you are forced into Gancelot, which then slows you down even more. So if you ride grade 3 first and you have like 2 Taarnas in your hand, sick. You do the Alfred, you call 2 Taarnas, blah blah blah, and stupid stuff, amazing stuff right there. But if you don't, Taarna can become quite dead in hand quite easily. So it's kind of like, do you want to play this more balls to the wall game, or do you want to play the more consistent, conservative game? That's basically the question you're asking. Some people were saying this is broken. This is not broken at all. Ichiton is broken. This is just good. There's plenty of tier 1 decks that completely destroy even Taarna Alfred turns, like Ange, Coral, ZTB, Dominate. So I don't know, it's not that amazing, but I can't see why this is good. It's definitely good, but it's risky. So personally, I don't run it right now, because if you're gonna do that, one thing Taarna is very good at is ride fixing. Since we only have these 4 Alfreds right now, you could run the older Alfreds, like Oath or maybe the Legion, whatever, run your Taarnas, and then if you misride into, let's say, an Oath, you can still go Taarna and fetch the correct one. So that's something you can do. But with that being said, if you get that first stride, you have to start making the choice, do I go into this Taarna? And you might just get behind. I get the value, I do get it, but for now I'm not playing that. Now next up, I'm still running the multiple Blaster Blade Spirits, as I said, but this girl is so good. I'm seriously considering lowering my amounts of loose or my amounts of Blaster Blade Spirit, because she's just too damn good. We all know her already, everyone ran her. She basically fetches your Floral Paladin Flogel. As you know or don't know, this card is the only reason this deck even exists. This card together with Blaster Blade is great, because you get to restand a gigantic steroided up Blaster Blade, and that's all fun and games. But the problem is this deck has no way of actually fetching this Flogel in the first place. So that's why this girl is here, because by running 2 or 3 of this, you are essentially running 7 or 6 Floral Paladin Flogel instead of 4. And so I found games where I run her, where I get her, are way easier to win, because suddenly you do have your Floral Paladin, and Floral Paladin is everything. So I'm definitely considering bumping her up, putting these 2 extra copies in of me, or maybe 1, or maybe even 3. But the point is, she's so good, and I don't know. For now, I'm really considering. I'm still testing. I want to test 24/7, but it's a definite contender to go up, because without Floral Paladin Flogel, this deck is basically vanilla hit for high numbers. So next up, grade 1s. We run our 4 Lien. This PG is so good, it's so free, there's really no reason why I would run anything else. Sure, Counterblast is a thing, it can be iffy, but nothing beats PGing for free, especially because this deck doesn't plus a lot. So That's one way to plus by not having to minus. Even when draw PGs come out, I'm actually considering still running her for the reason that draws kinda lost value. This deck wants to win really early. And apart from that, a free PG is just so darn good. So we'll see. Maybe I'll go for 2-2 in the end, or maybe I'll just run 4 of this. But then again, even if you start cutting her, you know, for your draw PGs, what are you getting instead? There's really no amazing grade 1s available right now that would be really worth it, I think. So we'll see. Next up, for Blaster friend Bargle, he works together with our Lou, and apart from that, it's a counter charge engine, which is very, very necessary in this deck. So there's really no reason to run less than this. Maybe 3 if you're really tight for space, you're playing something else or something, but less than 3, no fucking way. Then for Alan, he's just a tiny Beanon. That's what I call him. He's tiny Beanon. If you don't know, back in the day, we used to go for, in Sanctuary Guard, we ran Sanctuary Guard with Blaster Blade. And so what we would do is, we would rush, get our Beanon, which would call a Miron, which would get us a card. And so you would suddenly have played extra cards on the field and immediately plus. So you basically didn't minus your hand and only plus your field. So this way you just had a swinging column that also plus your hand. So it was just really good for rushing, and Alan is basically that, but in grade 1 form. Sure, it doesn't hit a 14 column like the other one, but hey. But that also matters less, because right now many grade 2s are becoming 10Ks, and so 14 is no longer a magic number on 10K, and 11 isn't either. So like, it doesn't really matter. He by himself will hit 11, and it's just part of your strong rush. With that being said, Counterblast is expensive in this deck, so you could maybe run 3 or something, but he's definitely valuable, so I wouldn't cut him out completely just yet. The rush is really important in this deck because you want to win the early game in order to win against decks like Ange, Coral, ZTB and Dominate, because by default those decks are still stronger. At least this deck still has a pretty good early game, so abuse that. Next up, still 2 Stride Fodders, and I would like to run a little more for the very simple reason that grade 3s are more important than ever. Because you have your markers, you want to be rewriting your Alfreds all the time. And so that's one less grade 3 you have in hand every single turn, because you have to ride and then ditch for stride. And so because of that, the stride fodders actually got more valuable. With that being said, we don't really have room. So sure, if we start running draw PGs, we have more grade 1 room, which would give us room for this. Maybe I cut an Allen for an extra stride fodder. Still want to do some testing on that specifically, but you do want to run some at least. Now there's one more option. I think it's shit. I don't think there's any reason to be still running this. With that being said, since we no longer have our Blaster Blade Exceed to fetch our Blaster Blade names, maybe there's an argument to be made to actually run these in order to fetch your Blaster Blades. But considering you also run less of this, you also have less chances of actually hitting them. And so it's very possible that you finally hit with Wingal Youth, check top, and don't find the Blaster. So I don't know, I'm not a fan, I'm no longer running him, but it's an option you can experiment with. Now for triggers, there's a very clear contender, and if you don't run 4, I don't know what you're doing with your life. He's just too good. This card is the only reason this deck exists. If you're not running 4, I don't know what you're doing. This card is everything. What you're always doing, if you don't know yet, you basically have, let's say, 2 force right here. And then you have your Blaster Blade on top. So you have this 30,000 Blaster Blade. And then you attack with Vanguard, you hit some crits, put them on here. Suddenly this thing is 40,000 or 50,000. Usually it's 50,000. That's pretty easy to hit. You swing with it with your 50,000 Blaster Blade with crits on it. Then you go for Flogel, restand, do it again. That's why Flogel is so amazing. Suddenly your 50,000 attack is 2 50,000 attacks, and then with the pressure of the crits, that's just too damn good. So that's the only reason the deck works. So you're running 4. With that being said, the new triggers, the fact that they have plus 10,000 power instead of 5 matters a lot. So unless your effect is absolutely busted, like Floral Paladin Flogo right here, you should be running as many new triggers as you can. So with that being said, we have our 4 Flogal right here. As I said, new triggers, 15,000 shield, 10,000 power, they are just too damn good. Next up, and I think considering you will see this, 4 more of the new crit, there is maybe something else we should be discussing. And that is the option of running 4 Lus. Now, if you don't know, Lu works together with our friend here, Bargle, a starter option, and Flogal. So this creates an argument of which starter do you want to be running? Because if you're gonna be running Bargle, you have to run these Lus, at least 2, but preferably more than that. So let's get into that debate really quickly here. Sorry, the debate is basically, do you run Bargle? Because what Bargle does is, you write your grade 1, you get your Bargle, use Bargle like this, get a Lu from deck. Next turn, you stand, you do that thing, and you get a Flogal from deck. Now that you have these 3 lined up, you put them into the soul and you get yourself Blaster Blade on your Vanguard circle. So just like that, you rode your 10k Blaster Blade, and then that Blaster Blade is ready to come out when you ride Alfred early and get your Blaster Blade to the rearguard circle. So that's why you run Bargle. The problem is Bargle needs to exist here for a while. Meaning, if your opponent runs Kagero, they can just snipe and he's gone, lost all your value. Which is something that can happen, same with the ZTB matchup actually. But of course, that can be said for every starter, except if you go for Wingal Brave, which could, in theory, disappear on grade 1 already because you run Blaster Friend Bargle. Apart from that, Bargle also forces you into playing these Lus. Because without Lu, the skill just doesn't go off. So that means you run even less of the new triggers. And those new triggers are so overpowered. Those new triggers are the only reason you would even choose to play Blasters over ZTB, Ange-Coral or Dominate. So you are suddenly taking away one of your sickest trump cards, which is basically when you trigger one of these crits, which is plus 10,000, you get 2 triggers, 2 old triggers. It's 10,000 versus 5,000. It's hitting 2 triggers. It's so good. So you are choosing this Bargle, but that also means you are choosing these Lus, or at least 2. But still, you kind of need 4 because you could maybe draw into 1 or 2 or damage check or something like that. It's really easy to still get completely RNG'd out with 2. So maybe 3. Let's say you start running 3. That's 3 less good triggers, and you're already running 4 Floral Paladin Flogal. So to me the question is that worth it? And considering that this whole deck is about making a gigantic Blaster Blade that then restands, I simply don't value this Bargle as much. Back in the day it was overpowered, I get it, but right now I don't think it's as worth it as the power these triggers have. But of course, if you want to run it, it's an option, go right ahead. But I am using my trusty friend Wingal Brave. With that being said, Wingal Brave also lost value. So yeah, very big amount of choices you can be making. But since we took out Blaster Laura, which is a grade 1 with a blaster name, which makes this a more consistent option, because, well, Alan is just a better choice in every single way. Since we got rid of Laura, and we got rid of Exceed, at least as a ride option, suddenly Wingal Brave only has this as a Vanguard target or this as a Vanguard target. And if you are unable to hit on one of these 2 and you are riding into your Alfred early, suddenly your Wingal Brave is a vanilla that can no longer go off. And we obviously don't want that. So for that reason, I also considered, and boy, this felt really painful, I also considered this Legend deck card. Hear me out. This card is completely vanilla the second you have to ride Alfred early. Generally, okay, there's maybe some things you can still do, but like forcing yourself into those awkward situations just to get this off in case you hit is a terrible idea. So it's vanilla if you manage to just luck out and not have one of these as your Vanguard in the early game and hit. This one, sure, is only live in GB, which is annoying, but it fetches you a blaster. And as I said before, since we lost our Exceed to fetch blasters, there's quite some value in being able to fetch a blaster. So right now I am still going for the Vanguard Brave, but I mean, it's a really guilty pleasure because everyone was laughing at this card when the Legend deck came out. It's not a very good Forerunner, but it's an option I'm really considering. So if I play some more games and I start noticing that this is vanilla more often than not, I might just go for this eternal sin of a Forerunner. Now, with this starter war out of the way, let's go into my final trigger, because they kind of interrupted here, which is Elaine. The reason, again, 10,000 power is just way too good. I did consider running the Unflippers instead, for the very simple reason that Counterblast is a costly resource in this deck. I mean, we have Blaster Friend Bargle, but we don't always get to use it, since we are able to fetch less Blaster Blades generally. So getting that counter charge is good, but getting that 10,000 power on our Blaster Blade that's restanding is even better in my opinion. So for that reason, we run the new heal. This means that inside my version of the deck, we are actually running 12 of the new triggers, which then increases the odds of making a disgustingly large Blaster Blade. Getting into the most important choice, which markers do you run? I run these caravan decks, well, start decks from Springfest markers. They're completely black. I think they're very edgy and cool. So these are my force markers and I think they're very cool for now. I really don't like the trial decks markers, to be honest. Like if you have a signed one, awesome. Or if you're a really big Blaster Blade fan and you just get all the Blaster Blade markers, awesome. But I really like this super simplistic marker option right here. I'm considering getting custom ones or something, but those aren't legal in big Bushiroad events. So I would only use them for locals and stuff, which is still cool. But for now, these minimalist black ones are pretty dope, and so I use those. Getting into the G deck, I run 3 Gancelot. Are they visible? Yeah, they're very visible. So I run these 3 Gancelots because, as I said, Counterblast is a thing, and also triggering those 4 drive checks is better than ever. Because suddenly you are pumping crits on a Blaster Blade that's bigger than ever. And suddenly triggers have more value than ever, because suddenly it's at 10,000 power. So because of Gancelot, even if you run out of Counterblast and you're like, okay, I have to go Gancelot over Alfred Saver, this is still good, because you're gonna hit a trigger, and that trigger is gonna make your Blaster Blade into this enormous 10,000 plus monster. And so together with Flogel, I mean, basically this refunds you the cost of using Stardust Trumpeter to get your Floral Paladin Flogel. There's a very good reason to be running 3. I wouldn't go lower than this. Maybe 2, like if it would be fine-ish, but not 1. Don't run 1. 1 is not enough. Next up, 4 Alfred Holy Saver. If you have the soul, oh boy, Alfred. If you have the Counterblast for it, this is always an awesome option. Pretty simple. You just give your Blaster Blade Twin Drive, and apart from that, you also suddenly hit magic numbers, because back in the day that 3000 was just to make sure your Blaster Blade hit at all. But right now, what it actually does is, let's say, where is my Blaster Blade? Where is my boy? Blaster Blade is now at 10,000, and the highest base power of a Vanguard is 13,000 generally. So when you give that 3,000 to that 10,000, suddenly you have a 13,000 Blaster Blade, which can hit anything. Apart from that, this is just 2 extra checks, which can check a 10,000 trigger. As I said, that's so damn important. And so suddenly your Blaster Blade can just become huge again and restand with Flogel. You're probably noticing that I say a lot of the same things, and that's because this deck is very straightforward. That's also why I want to run those extra Stardust Trumpeters, because getting those Flogels is just too damn good and important. With that being said, apart from Gancelot and this, the rest of your deck doesn't really matter. Now, you could run Ultima. I don't own Ultima, but I would run it just in case. And then you have the question, do you maybe want to add 2 of Sarugal to be able to do some sickening Ultima abuse? Because Ultima could very well be your absolute finisher. You're able to stack the deck, you're able to do your Blaster Blade shenanigans, you're able to do so much disgusting things. Ultima is just, you're gonna win on Ultima. The question is, are you getting to Ultima? So if you want to maybe build a version of the deck where you just abuse Ultima so hard, maybe with 2 Sarugals, I get it. Personally, I don't like going back to those 5,000 triggers, but it's definitely an option. I don't own it right now. I would definitely just put it in to be sure. But apart from that, these 2 cards and maybe an Ultima, the rest of the Stride deck almost doesn't matter. If you are somehow bricking so hard that you need anything else, like these alt miles that I run, you're probably gonna lose anyway. With that being said, I do run them, so they're an option. I also run one of this. If you feel like, I have plenty of soul, I could actually just win right here and now, you might just go into this. I still don't like it, but it's a thing. I also think Sabreeze isn't good for the reason that now, even without striding, this deck does a lot, and the 2 counterblast is actually very, very valuable. So I don't run Sabreeze. I might just add it sometime soon, but not a big fan. With that being said, G-Guard wise, this is very, very good. You can get out your useless Allens if you feel like they are no longer worth that counterblast in the late game. So that thins your deck and then you get a really big Guardian. But since we use 4 Lien PGs, we don't have the soul to run more than 2. I run 2 of this. Technically, you could run 1. It doesn't really matter that much, but it's a good G-Guardian. I run a Dismal. I would run more because, let me tell you, if you play Premium and people see this deck, Blaster Blade is suddenly the target of targets. Blaster Blade just needs to die. And so being able to just go Dismal, so especially in the Nubatama matchup where they have some pretty big attacks before even getting to their own attacks, and those attacks are forced to go on the Vanguard, you can literally go, oh, so you attack my Vanguard, I Dismal, Blaster Blade, and suddenly they have loads of attacks, sure, but at least your Blaster Blade has been guarded. Also, it's a full art from Comic Fiesta, which is pretty dope. I may bump this up to 2. And finally, one of these. It's just in there, it doesn't really matter that much. Generally, you are almost gonna use this one just because you know it's coming. Good players will attack Blaster Blade, or you go into your Marin. Those, like, technically you could just run 3 G-Guards and be done with it. Regardless, options are options. And we can run this many G-Guards because the only strides you'll ever need are your Gancelots and your Alfreds. So that is basically it. That is my premium deck. That's why I built the way I built. As I said, I will probably put in more Stardust Trumpeters because they're too damn important to me. Getting those Flowels is too damn good. But that's basically the premium deck. That's the way I built it. That's my thoughts on it. That's why I don't run Bargle right now. And yeah, I play it on this beautiful Alfred playmat from Zero Damage Gaming. I actually find this deck more fun than I initially thought it would be. As I said, Premium has so many damn options. You suddenly have to choose between the large vanilla triggers and the effect triggers. You have so many choices you have to make, so many things to think about, and that's what I really, really like about the format. With that being said, Ichi Kishima Tom is an issue. Tom needs to be banned, or Ichi needs to be banned. I think Ichi should be banned. And I'm actually gonna build OTT Premium even if Ichi gets banned. I'm an OTT fan, I like the deck. So it's not like, oh fuck Ichi and all the OTT players, it's just, Ichi is an issue. But yeah, that is the Premium Blasters deck. I find Premium even cooler than I first thought it would be. It's just so many options, I dig it. Hope you found this interesting. If you did, please subscribe to the Solemn Vanguard channel and click the bell button to stay up to date. Like the video if you liked the video, and let me know in the comments if I missed anything. Is there an even cooler combo that can be done inside this gigantically interesting format? Or is there something in this deck you would run yourself that maybe others haven't thought about? Let me know and I will see you soon. Ciao.